So in the month of September 2023, I listened to a very narrow selection of albums, but a good amount. Like, really, I looked at this list and realized this might be the longest one yet, but this could also be the shortest video, because I will probably just repeating myself a few times. Anyway, so the first album of note that I listened to, because okay, for some reason I spent like a week or two not really listening to new music. I think I was working on something, I can't remember. But the first album I actually did listen to this, first new one I should say, that I actually did listen to this month was the I Care Because You Do album by Aphex Twin. Because somehow this is an album I haven't listened to completely. I've listened to selected ambient works before. I've listened to like various singles by Aphex Twin. But for some reason, this album, which I think is one of the most recognizable albums from Aphex Twin, mainly because, well, for me, it's mainly because I remember seeing this showing up in YouTube recommended. That's actually how I learned what Aphex Twin was. But it's also for the fact that the artwork is just what it is, and how I at least remember looking at this and thinking, what the fuck could this possibly be? Some like metal album? And no, not at all. In fact, this album cover is so iconic in my mind that I used it as a little Easter egg for the jump scare at the beginning of the Shining video. I find jump scares to be pointless for the most part. It is a destination with no journey, with zero attack, minimum decay, no sustain, and zero release. For synthesizers, these terms are used as... And yes, the irony of not listening to this album until now, even though I used it in the video a year ago, is not lost on me. There weren't a lot of songs on this album that I did add, just... How the fuck do you even say this? Okay, Acrid, Avid, Jam, Shred. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they just took random words and threw them together. That's kind of what I get from every title for an Aphex Twin song. But yeah, that one and Icthedral, those were the two that I added off of this album. Yeah, so those were the two songs I added. Now, there was one song that I want to say it was called Ventolin. I think that's what it was, because I'm looking at it right now. I just have to ask, what the fuck is the story with this one? Because there was a constant ringing sound in this song. Like, just this high-pitched frequency that if you were to just remove, I'm pretty sure the song would actually be bearable. I almost skipped this song because I got about 10 seconds in and realized, wow, this thing is just going to be throughout the entire mix, huh? Yeah, I don't get the reason for this. Yeah, so after listening to that album, I then listened to the Digeridoo EP by Aphex Twin and as well as Xylem Tube EP. Because on Spotify, they have like the same album cover, basically. So I thought that they were just companion pieces, listen to them, and yeah, they actually were a lot more bearable than the Tinnitus song on the last album. But in all seriousness, out of these 8 songs I think they wore, I only really added Polynomial C. The other ones were fine, but it was Polynomial C that actually made it onto the list. And to just round this out, I have listened to the Richard D. James album, like pieces of it, I think. But this was probably the first time that I finally listened to the whole thing, and only added just a couple songs on there. The opening track, 4, pretty decent. But then you get to something like Girl Boy song, which I think is actually at the end of the album. Second last song, yeah. And somehow I just don't remember that song, so I'm guessing that I probably only got up to about 3 songs in and stopped. And now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure that is exactly what happened, because when I think to the time that I definitely remember listening to the Richard D. James album, I was actually in the middle of, like, moving a bunch of furniture or whatever. Yeah. I guess I stopped doing that after 5-10 minutes. I was like, alright, I'm done with this album for now. I'll listen to it later, and never did. Okay, so I think I did listen to enough Aphex Twin this month, so moving on to the next album, White Pony by Deftones, which I already talked about last month, but this stayed on my listening rotation this month, and probably will for the next couple months, because it is such a good album. And definitely would be album of the year, I'm pretty sure. I can't think of, at least I'm not expecting an album to come out or to listen to that's going to be better than this one with how much I've listened to it on loop. But yeah, White Pony is an album that I've just been listening to a lot. So we're going to move on from that, because if you want to hear my thoughts on that, I go into detail in the last video. But no, I did listen to Adrenaline, though, the first Deftones album, because I decided that I was going to start going through their discography since I liked White Pony so much. So I wanted to start with the first one, or go back to the first one, I should say, because I have listened to Around the Fur and White Pony, but not the first one, Adrenaline. And the thing with Adrenaline is I was kind of expecting an album that wasn't going to be all that great. I was thinking, for some reason I was thinking, like, alright, maybe they released out the first album, it was just okay, but then Around the Fur would be the album that really was good. Because I don't hear people talk about Adrenaline really at all, but I do hear people talk about Around the Fur and White Pony a lot more. So I was thinking it was that kind of thing where by the second album, they really made a name for themselves. And they probably did in like pop culture, but I figured that would also be true artistically. But no, with Adrenaline, it actually is a really solid debut album. Bored, really good opening to the album. Birthmark, a really good song. Spiral, really good song as well. And the whole experience was very cohesive as well, which I, again, was not expecting from this album. The next album that I will probably listen to of Deftones is, I'm just going to go in order, and it's going to be their self-titled one from 2003 and just go from there. So, I guess look forward to my thoughts on that in the next month of music. And the next and final album of the month that I listened to is Yumeno Garden by Last Dinosaurs. This was a recommendation by my friend Dylan, so I finally listened to this album because he recommended this to me a while ago. Finally got around to listening to it, and I quite like it, actually. So this album felt very Australian, or really very Tame Impala, because there were a couple of moments that did make me think of the like surf rock and garage rock elements of King Gizzard. But this really did just feel like I was listening to the greatest hits of Tame Impala. In not a bad way at all, and really a pretty good way. Because there were elements from like Anu Speaker that felt like I was hearing, elements of Lonerism, and as well elements of Currents. Some of the songs, some of the singing really felt like it felt very similar to Kevin Parker's singing. It was still a unique thing, so don't get confused where it wasn't just like a Tame Impala ripoff, but it did have that feeling to it. And because of that, and because I do really like listening to Tame Impala, I am interested in what else this band has to offer, because the overall vibe really is it is just a really chill vibe for the whole album, and I don't know, I kind of need a bit more music that's like that. Just from the first listen of this album, I added 11 Cents and Happy, but I'm pretty sure I will listen to this album some more and probably add some more songs to it as well, because I think that as I listen to this more, I will pick out more unique elements and moments on the album. Yeah, you are just getting a first impression really from me on this album, but first impression is that this album is pretty good. Right, so those are the albums I listened to in the month of September. Subscribe to the channels. I'm out.